Right, I got 9 o'clock here, so I'll go ahead and get started. Good morning. It is July 28th, 2025. I'm Dan covering the Spokane side, and then on the Seattle side, we have Anna. And just as a reminder, this meeting is being recorded, so by joining and participating in this session, consent is being given to the recording. So please keep your cameras off for the per the NOAA Privacy Act statement. All right, let's get into it here. So first, I will start with the current satellite imagery, and right now we have a big upper low pressure system out in the Gulf of Alaska, which is sending a small wave up into northwestern California there, and that will be the focus over the next several few days for thunderstorm potential here in the northwestern US. So this feature down here is something we'll be keeping an eye on for the next few days regarding our lightning potential. So in the past 24 hours here, I kind of broke this up into two chunks. Up in the northern portion of Idaho 101, there is about 10 or so lightning strikes in the Sandpoint area. There's a thunderstorm that went up near Mount Spokane and quickly moved northeast, threw out several lightning bolts. I actually saw a few, and that storm was moving really quick, and it didn't drop a lot of rain, and it looked like there was at least one fire start from that. And then this morning, there's actually another round of showers and thunderstorms that moved through southeast Washington and the southern half of Idaho 101 there, and that threw out an additional 25 strikes or so, with the majority of them to the west of Lewiston in zone 709, Washington 709 there. And those were moving really fast too, so there wasn't a lot of precipitation that came from them, and it looked like there were at least a couple fire starts down there too. And as far as the precipitation amounts, just because the storms were moving pretty fast and we have a dry atmosphere, none of the rain gauges in the area actually picked up over 1/10 of an inch. But there is a suggestion from the radar algorithm precipitation that there were some pockets that got a wetting rain, like in northern Spokane County. So it's kind of spotty with this stuff, but overall it was kind of mostly dry thunderstorms, unless storms kind of trained over the same area. And the current radar, there's that round of morning stuff that went through Lewiston. Now it's in Shoshone County, and it's moving northeast out into Montana within the next 30 minutes to an hour. So there are a few strikes in southern Shoshone County. Those were probably still dry-ish thunderstorms, so potential fire starts from those as well. So here is the fire weather matrix. Anna, do you want to talk first about Western Washington?
So today, fire weather concerns are pretty low. We have weak high pressure building aloft with some onshore flow promoting good RH recoveries overnight. And then into Tuesday, that low pressure system is going to drop a little bit along the coast. We're going to continue to warm into tomorrow on the west side as we have that southerly flow develop a little stronger aloft. There will be a slight increase in instability on Tuesday. However, we're not expecting any precipitation on the west side. And our primary days of concern for Western Washington are going to be Wednesday and Thursday. There's a threat of isolated thunderstorms with some warmer and drier conditions, but there will be an influx of moisture with kind of that Pacific air moving in. some decent mid-level and high-level moisture with that. There is some uncertainty over the coverage and intensity of any thunderstorms that do develop, and especially Thursday, there's some uncertainty just depending on how much cloud cover there is that might kind of hinder some of that thunderstorm activity. But for Wednesday and Thursday, the primary impacts that we're concerned with those isolated thunderstorms are going to be lightning, which could, start some new starts. It really hasn't taken much on the west side as we've seen so far this season. And then any of these thunderstorms are probably going to be capable of producing some downpours with them, which may cause some concerns for any burn scars that we do have. These thunderstorms will likely have enough moisture to produce wetting rains. So it's definitely something we're continuing to keep an eye on. And then on Friday, there is still a threat of thunderstorms on the west side. However, steering flow is going to, whatever thunderstorms that do develop, they'll probably drift eastward towards the east side. And then, fire weather concerns really decrease for us over the weekend as we see an increase of onshore flow. So I'll go ahead and pass it back over to you, Dan, to talk about the east side and northern Idaho.
All right. Thank you. Yeah, I thought you covered that really well. There is quite a bit of uncertainty as we get into the midweek and where exactly these thunderstorms will end up and what exactly the impacts will be. But just kind of starting today, Monday, as the showers move out of North Idaho, we're just looking at a warm, dry, and unstable day. And that kind of goes mostly the same for tomorrow, too, except some isolated thunderstorm chances in North Idaho along the Montana border. But then as we get into like Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, that's where the expected thunderstorm coverage starts to increase and how wet those thunderstorms will be. It kind of looks like Wednesday might be kind of a mix of both wet and dry cores, just depending on like the speed of the thunderstorms and if there's multiple storms passing over the same area. But then as we get into like Thursday and Friday, that's when they look to be a little bit more wet as our atmosphere has a lot more moisture that it could hold. And we're still remaining warm, but the fire concerns kind of peak like into Wednesday, maybe like early Thursday with the drier cores. But then as we get into like later Thursday and then like into the early weekend, that's when things at least look to be a little bit more wet, which would kind of put a damper on the potential for fire starts, but still an off chance there. So that's kind of what we're looking at here. Let me, I got to bounce around a little bit here. As far as the rain amounts over the next 7 days, generally most of the rain will be like near the Cascade Crest and eastward into eastern Washington and North Idaho, kind of in the Cascades, maybe up to 1/4 of an inch over the next 7 days, and like central and eastern Washington, kind of the same deal. But generally, the more north and east you get, like into the northern mountains, you'll have a higher chance for rain amounts like greater than 1/2 inch, perhaps even in far north Idaho, like above an inch. So it'll be nice to see some wetting rains if we get some more wet cores passing over the same area. I'm going to go back to the slides actually just to cover what the chances of the thunderstorms look like for each day. So this is tomorrow, Tuesday. Like I was saying, the greatest potential for thunderstorms is like in the Idaho Panhandle, 15 to 20% chance, with kind of the greatest chance in like the southern portion of Idaho 101 along the Montana border, perhaps like a few extra strikes there. And these will kind of be on the drier side. And then for Wednesday, the thunderstorm chances are kind of pretty widespread, like 10 to 20% over the higher terrain, especially like near the Cascade Crest, kind of like 10 to 20-ish, with the highest chances like in the northern mountains, like the Cascades, Northern Cascades National Park area, and then like Northeast Washington mountains and the Idaho Panhandle Mountains as well. And then Thursday looks like our best chance for thunderstorms with that like wave that I was talking about in near California that'll start to like drift northward towards our area. This is greater probabilities. So Cascades, Northeast Washington, like 15 to 30% chance of thunderstorms. Even a small chance in Western Washington and the Olympics, like 5% chance. And like Seattle metro-ish area, like 10% or so. And then in Columbia Basin, like a 10 to 20% chance. But with these storms moving pretty quickly, the terrain will really help assist new developments. So that's why the chances are kind of higher in the mountains. And then North Idaho, looking at like a 25 to 40% chance. And then as we get into Friday, it looks like those thunderstorm chances decrease in the southern part of the Washington Cascades, but the northern part still like 15 to 30% chance, especially near the Canadian border. And Northeast Washington, like 15 to 30% chance, and the same thing for North Idaho. So yeah, we're looking at several days of thunderstorms, and they will get progressively wetter each day as the atmosphere starts to hold more and more moisture. So, and then just kind of dialing in on today's like details for temperature, humidity, and wind. On the west side, temperatures will be mostly in the 70s to low 80s. And then on the central and eastern Washington, we're looking in the lowlands at temperatures in the low to mid 90s. And for North Idaho, kind of like upper 80s to low 90s. As far as relative humidities on the west side, generally like 40 to maybe like 35 to 55%. And then as you get east of the Cascade Crest, pretty dry, looking at like 15 to 25% humidity today. So pretty dry despite those morning thunderstorms kind of coming through. And our winds will be fairly light today across all of Washington and North Idaho, generally less than 10 miles per hour, and maybe some breeziness in the Cascade Gaps, like Ellensburg, Wenatchee, Butterville Plateau, with like southwest gusts up to 20 miles per hour in the evening. Let's see. Let me go to trends here, and I'll start on the west side there.
So as you can see for Ahanapakosh, so conditions are going to warm towards the middle of the week. And this is one of our warmest and driest locations in the western portion of the Cascades. You can see RH values will drop pretty low into, the mid to upper 20% range. And high temperatures will be near 90 degrees on Tuesday and Wednesday, which is when we have that thunderstorm threat as well. And then kind of later on in the week, towards the weekend, we have that onshore flow. So temperatures will start to gradually decrease. And you can see that while overnight recoveries are pretty good this week anyway, they really do start to improve towards the weekend. So we're kind of watching those RH values and those warm temperatures, especially in terms of those thunderstorms and any new starts.
All right. Awesome. Thank you. And I will show Douglas here for Central Washington. So over the next few days, it's going to be pretty warm and pretty dry with the RHs in the afternoon reaching into the teens, temperatures in the upper 80s and 90s. And then after we get potentially several rounds of thunderstorms moving through the region, when we get into like Friday, that's when we start to cool off and our humidity start to rise into like the 25 to 35% range. So as we get into the weekend, it'll just be a little cooler, better nighttime RH recoveries, and maybe a little bit higher winds, but nothing that's looking critical in that time frame, like 6 to 10 mile per hour west winds, maybe 14 like Saturday evening, but not too concerning of a trend for Central Washington. And then for North Idaho, I'll pick Hoodoo, just staying warm over these next few days and with pretty light winds, dry conditions, RHs in the teens and low 20s, but kind of the same trend where we start to have better recoveries after several potential rounds for thunderstorms as we get into the late week and into the weekend. And as far as the 8 to 14 day temperature outlook, this covers August 4th through 10th, looking at some areas of near normal temperatures kind of on the eastern side of Washington and North Idaho and like near the Canadian border. But as you get southwest, those chances for above average temperatures increase. And then for the 8 to 14 day precipitation outlook, we are again in above normal probabilities to see like more precipitation than we normally would. But this time of year, that would kind of suggest more of a thunderstorm threat. So we'll have to keep an eye on what exactly this time period will bring for us. Whether that will bring more rounds of dry thunderstorms or not will be determined kind of at a later time. So I think I've said enough here. And if you want any other fire weather info, you could go to the OTX fire dashboard, just weather.gov/OTX/fire dashboard. And I'm going to stop the recording now, open it up for any potential questions.